Hey, and welcome to the podcast. We are back after our Thanksgiving break, and hopefully you had a great opportunity to do a ton of different things with your family. David and I were talking about our Thanksgivings beforehand, and while sometimes family makes Thanksgiving fun, and sometimes family makes Thanksgiving a sarcastic kind of fun, um, it is just one of those things where it's an opportunity that also you get to kind of take a step back and get to be part of your family again. And I think that sounds really, really cliche, but especially in our world and the season that we're in right now, this is where we're always thinking about the next thing that's coming, whether it be a Christmas party or whether it be a youth event or whether it be a church Christmas party or whether it be Advent or staff party or fill in the blank. I mean, I literally sat down with my wife last night and I was like, we have a Christmas party tomorrow, the day that this podcast comes out. Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Wednesday.
Not to mention Christmas programs and
well, no, I included the Christmas programs like because it's like the Christmas program is our church Christmas party. So like our church comes together, the kids do the Christmas program, and then we all do dinner together. That's our Christmas party for the church. However, we also have a youth Christmas party. We have a small group Christmas party. We have a staff Christmas party. My wife has a staff Christmas party. We have a friend Christmas party. And so there's a lot of things going on. And so with that being said, I think this is just a wonderful reminder to stop and breathe. A wonderful reminder of take a day at a time. Don't freak out. Don't get stressed out. Just for the sake of, I mean, realistically, you're your own worst image when you are stressed out and anxious. Everybody is. And so walking into the rest of this season, and this being the first of our of our series for December, just wanted to kind of take a second and say, hey, take a moment, breathe. Today's still coming. Tomorrow's still coming. You're fine. And so with that being said, like, this is December. We have officially made it. And for some of y'all, I'm sure 2025 has been crazy. And honestly, I think 2025 for me has been pretty good. We've definitely dealt with some things, but comparative to, I feel like everything still is going to be compared to COVID. Sure. But with that being said,
we're like, hey, I think COVID, 2020, we're good.
Yeah. 2053 was pretty rough, but it wasn't no COVID.
The world didn't shut down or anything, so I guess we're okay. I lost both of my arms, but hey, COVID.
I still got to go eat out at a restaurant, all right? Oh, this man, sidetrack. It could. But with that being said, like, I think my favorite thing about this past week was the fact of there were multiple days this past week that, like, I didn't do anything other than, like, hang out with my family, play video games with my boys, watch TV and goof off with my wife, go on a couple date nights with my wife. Like, it was just a great week. And so with that being said, I hope that is modeling after yours. If it's not, you have Christmas to do the same. And if you're like, hey, I don't really, like, we're all in 100 different ways, 100 different places, kind of thing like that. Take it or leave it. This is something our family does. Every time we have a break, everybody picks two things that they want to do. And it's two things that they want to do as a family. And so with that, like, I have two things, my wife has two things, and both of my boys have individually their own two things. And so we went putt-putting, we went bowling, we went into the movies. My wife wanted to take pictures. I wanted to go play golf. And so there's tons of things that we got to do. There's tons of different opportunities where we could get family involved and do different things. But more time than not, we just wanted, with the whole pick two thing that we do, we want it to be intentional time with our family. And especially in these situations, sometimes it feels like we are going, like my next couple weeks of going from Christmas party to Christmas party to Christmas party, or we have to travel or do all the things. And so just opportunities where you can have that intentional time is super, super important. But I've spent 5 minutes rambling and not talking about our topic at hand, and we are going to move towards that. And so, hey, guess what? With the month of December, we're going to talk about Advent. Woo! And so, but the thing is I believe that we in the church don't necessarily downplay Advent, but I believe that it comes as an event on the calendar more than an intentional focus, if that makes sense.
Thing we do.
And so, yeah, 100%. And so today is just talking about what Advent really means, and why we should focus in and celebrate Advent, even when we are the ones that are leading all the different things. We are all the ones doing all the different activities, and coordinating all the different trips and plans and everything else. We still need to take time to celebrate Advent ourselves. And so, with that being said, the word Advent. I wanted to start with this because it seems pretty. Well, the word Advent comes from the Latin adventus, which is about a coming or an arrival, which makes sense. And the Latin translation of the New Testament goes through this explanation. And when we look at the Bible, we're looking at this coming of Christ, this coming of the baby Jesus, which is what we celebrate. And that's what a lot of people just kind of leave it as. But in all reality, Advent is not necessarily just about the coming of baby Jesus. It's about our hope and our eagerly awaiting for the future coming of Jesus. And so when you celebrate Advent, this should be an opportunity for you to celebrate the future coming of Jesus. And this is an opportunity for you to continue in the process that, Christians for thousands of years have been doing, is just this mindset of what Paul says in Philippians, just this mindset of like, if I get to go see Christ, great. That is my hope. That is my goal. That is my focus. But if I don't, I will do everything in my power to take as many people with me. So throughout church history, Advent has been, like I said, more traditionally focused on Jesus's future arrival, but a lot of times we kind of just boil it down to this Christmas aspect and this Christmas mindset. And one of the interesting things that are you familiar with Wesley Huff, David, the guy that's kind of popped up on social media? He's been doing a really, really interesting series forever. I've been told by all kinds of people in church that Christmas is covering up a pagan holiday. Yep. And Wes is kind of doing this series right now to where he's talking about how it doesn't. And as a matter of fact, like, there's tons of different traditions throughout the years, and how basically the origin of all of the things that we believe and center ourselves around on Christmas and Advent and everything else, he's going through individually all these different historical archive things and talking through where these thoughts originate, what we thought they covered, and when those actually were. It's been really, really interesting. So if I think about it, I'll tag this in the show notes for the people that are listening to this podcast. But if not, just go look up Wes Huff or Wesley Huff. He is the director of Apologetics Canada, but he does a lot of social media stuff too. And he does a lot of really, really good theology and understanding of church history and just the practices that we do. And he does a lot of really, really cool stuff. But it's been super fascinating, and I've been watching it. So the Advent season leads us to the celebration of Jesus's birth. And really, it's just this aspect of waiting. And so I don't know about you, there's definitely different seasons of waiting. I go back to waiting as a kid for Christmas, when it's like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to get presents, or I can't wait to see what's actually in the presents that have been under the tree for 3 weeks, or whatever. So there's that aspect. There's the aspect of, man, I can't wait to see family. There's the aspect of, man, I can't wait to get out of school. And so there's so many different things as a kid that where you're like, oh man, like, I can't wait. But even as we move into adulthood, there's these aspects and these models of wait. And so why is waiting so difficult? And what can it teach us about our faith?
Man, how much time we got? Wait for the answer. Just kidding. I think the hard thing about waiting is that we we hear this a lot, but it bears reminding is like we live, at least in the Western culture, we live in that microwave society. We're used to I want what I want when I want it, how I want it, where I want it, all of those things. And we ultimately, I think, if we were to root it down to its most basic principle, I think it comes down to control. We want to be able to control every aspect of our life, and when things happen, we want to control our timing and all of that, and that can be a really difficult thing. And the when I think about the ancient practices of like being still and knowing that I am God, it's an intentional action. Meditation is something that means you're going to lie still and mostly silent for however long. The period of fasting and denying ourselves, depriving ourselves of, fill in the blank, in hope of gaining more wisdom, more knowledge, more, whatever it might be, whatever you're hoping for. And so I think the idea of waiting, patience, and hope kind of go well with each other, because when we are in a period of waiting, there is a hope and anticipation of something, of some kind of payout, whatever that payout might be. And so I think ultimately it's hard because we can play a certain thing up so heavily that we are easily disappointed, and sometimes too, the things that we're hoping for is unrealistic to start with, and so sometimes we set ourselves up for failure, too. And so I think that can be hard if we put it in a ministry situation. A lot of times the things that we're hoping for is kind of the main things that we look at as far as like statistics in youth ministry. It's like, okay, we're waiting for, or maybe the better word here is we're hoping for larger numbers, or whatever it might be in youth ministry. Like, most of us have the pressure from our churches. We have to grow this thing. And what does that metric look like? Are we talking about spiritually? Are we talking numerically? Are we talking, and all the different things and strategies and resources and stuff that we use? But I think ultimately what we're hoping for in youth ministry is that people are growing closer to Jesus. And what does that look like? And how do we accomplish that? And it's like, how do we hope for the things that we saw 20 years ago in ministry in a world that has radically changed? And how do we, when the standard is what church looked like 20, 30, 40 years ago in a world that doesn't look like that and doesn't work like that anymore? And, it's like, how do we get those results in this culture? And I think a lot of us are, I think we experience sort of the negative side of that because we're hoping for the wrong things. And ultimately what it comes down to, and what I think Advent brings more than anything, is number one, hope requires patient waiting. I love what you put in the notes here, Brent. I wasn't going to share that yet, but I was like, it fits really well. Hope requires patient waiting. But it all.
Well, and I think there's a dynamic with it though, like, and I think it's something that we might not necessarily kind of think through. You can't have hope without waiting. Like, hope does not exist without a sense of waiting.
Because I mean, if it was something instant, we wouldn't have to hope for it. It would just be there.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And so a lot of times, like, we think about this, but like the verse that kind of makes me jump to is Romans 8, and it talks verse 24 and 25, and it says, "Now in this hope we were saved, but hope that is seen is not hope, because who hopes for what he sees? Now if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with patience. And so I think with that mindset is like, talking about hope with all these different things, um, I think the mindset is at the end of the day, like, yeah, we can look towards numbers and everything else, and we've talked about the danger of using that as your focus, because if your focus is numbers, then all you're doing is building numbers. If your focus is disciples, then hopefully you're building students that will grow the program, because that will organically happen if you're teaching kids to be disciples. And so with this, like, I think there's a lot of focus with the kind of shallow aspect, like David was mentioning of, like, like, I'm hoping for my group to grow, or I'm hoping for the time when it's my big shot, like I get to preach on Sunday or whatever. I mean, there's 100 different ways you can throw that, especially in youth ministry. But I really, really feel like we once again have an opportunity to model what we do for our own families, but then also we have the opportunity to model for the ones that are near and dear to us, that are friends, but then also our youth groups as well. And so, like, Advent reminds us of longing for Jesus. Like, that's what it should be. Like, and the thing is like it says in Romans 8:25, if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with patience. And I think that's something that Paul modeled really, really well. And I mentioned that just a little bit ago. But like, how we bring this to the table when it comes to youth ministry is just this idea that students can relate to anticipating Christmas, anticipating the arrival of Christmas, but we need to teach them more than that. We need to be like, hey, like, the way that you look for this longing for the next school break, or the way that you look for this longing of, like, getting the presents or spending time with family, like, that should be in pale comparison to your longing of awaiting for Jesus. And so working on taking that practicality to where they can see the eager anticipation that they have already, and saying, hey, this should be minimal in comparison to how much you want Jesus to come back, which is really, really good. So Advent, first and foremost, is anticipation. It's this anxious awaiting for the arrival of the coming good, and that coming good is Jesus coming back. And so very, very, very much a thing. And this kind of goes into the Romans 8:24 and 25 a little bit more. It's just this mindset of Advent shapes hope. And so when we look at this, Advent trains us to trust God's promises. And the thing is we can't trust God's promises if we don't know what God's promises are. So if you're looking at opportunities for, like, man, I have like 2 more weeks of youth before Christmas break, or 3 more weeks of youth before Christmas break, maybe start looking into the promises that people are waiting for. Maybe that's the focus this year. Maybe you're working towards the mindset of, like, Advent is this process and this event of waiting. But what are we waiting on? Here are the things that we're waiting on. And then you once again bring the practicality and understanding to faith, which is super, super important. So with that, though, I mean, I think a lot of times I know I've met a lot of different youth pastors that don't spend time talking through the Advent season. They don't make a big deal of their church celebrating Advent. And in all reality, especially when I was younger, I don't know if y'all do the Advent candles and everything else, but our church does. We're a little bit more traditional in that regard. And so we have the Advent candles. We do the Advent reading every week. We have someone, like a different family, come up and light the candles and do all the different things. And that's all well and good, but, like, unless we're up there explaining the what's and the whys behind it, then we're really, really not doing the best thing that we can as far as preparing them to participate in the process. So, I mean, it'd be like telling kids to do communion, but not explaining why we do communion. Like, I mean, when I was growing up, until I got into youth group, I just was like, sweet bread and juice day. Like, and that was it. Like, And so what are we doing? What are we doing with this mindset of like, how do we focus in and say, hey, Advent is an important season. This is why. This is what you're hoping for. This is what you're waiting for. Join us in the hopeful arrival and expectation of Jesus coming
I
back.
think this just popped in my head, and I don't know that it's super relevant, but as far as like specific to today's topic, but when I think of Advent, if you wrap it up in a bow in all of what we think Christmas looks like and church tradition and stuff like that, I think one of the things that I think we might have talked about this last year. I know Brent and I have talked about it personally, but Christmas is my least favorite time of the year traditionally. Um, Although I'm starting to come around to it, and partially because Christmas, like a lot of other people, was a reminder of all the things I didn't have. And I don't mean that from a poor perspective, because yeah, we were poor, but I mean we didn't celebrate anything. We didn't celebrate birthdays. We didn't celebrate holidays. We didn't do a whole lot of things. My dad was more focused on trying to put food on the table than worrying about gifts and different things like that. And so um, there was never this sort of coming together. When people think of the holidays, they think, oh, I get to spend time with all my family and see all the people I don't see, which ironically, this year, I told Brent this when we were talking about our Thanksgiving, this is the first year in probably 5-ish years that my entire family, and by my entire family, I don't have a big family. So my dad, my sister, her boys, my wife and son. That's big for us. We were all in one house at my house. It all happened 2 days before I found out they're all coming to my house, and it was, usually that would stress people out, but it was more of a, dude, I never see my family. Let's go. This is going to be fun. And it was great. But I think it's hard to see the hope of the season and the warm, fuzzy Christmas feeling when that's just not part of your DNA, so to speak, growing up. And so, when I think about Advent, you think of sort of this theme of hope and peace and joy and love and the joy of the season and all of that stuff. But it's not always that for a lot of people. We can think about hope, we can think of peace, we can think of joy, we can think of love, and that's really what Advent points to. And I'm like, what am I hoping for? Well, I hope for Jesus. And what does peace look like? And what does joy look like? And when that's not modeled in your family or in your home life, this can be a tough time. Then you couple that with um, people who have lost loved ones recently, and this is the first time without that person, especially that person that was sort of the glue that kept the family, happy. You know what I mean? And for some people, that's all too real, And so, how do we anticipate hope and joy and peace and love when we don't necessarily know how to do that? And so, I think we have to begin to look at Advent as much as a spiritual discipline as prayer and fasting and worship and all the other things. And when we look at it as a spiritual discipline, and we as pastors especially need to be, staying on our disciplines, not just because it makes us look better, but because if we're going to say that we are this, then we need to, again, let our I say again, Brett and I pre-talk, um, let our yes be yes and our no be no. And if we're going to be the people that we're paid to be and called, more importantly, called to be, because not all of us are paid. Um, if we're going to be the pastors that God has called us to be, if we're going to be, more importantly, the human beings that God has called us to be, the husbands and fathers and youth pastors that we're supposed to be, or wives. I'd say husbands because we're both guys, but whatever your situation is, then we need to look at Advent season as a spiritual discipline. And for those who may be more like me, that changes the game completely. Now it's not just something I have to do. It's not songs I have to sing even though I hate them. It's now something I get to do, and I get to bring the hope and joy and peace that other people crave. Whether it's because you love this season and it's your favorite time of season, or you're hoping for to get through the season, whatever the situation might be, turning into a spiritual discipline, allows God to, number one, be the center of it, but it also allows God to shape and mold this season of your life. And you might actually learn something and grow as a human being. Isn't that really what we're all trying to do?
Yeah. No, and you said that's off topic, dude. I think that's right where we need to be. And I think for so many people, like we as youth pastors probably feed into this more than we think. We say, "Oh, hey, how was your Christmas? What'd
Yeah,
you get?" Or, "Hey, man, how was your Christmas?" Like did you go see family? Or like, and immediately we jump to these like really, like, don't get me wrong, they're qualities of
sure.
Christmas, they're qualities of Advent, but we jump to the most comparison
Yes.
driven
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
when in all reality it's like, man, how did you celebrate
That's what it should be.
Jesus?
Yeah.
Like, how did you spend time with your family this week? How did you, and then it doesn't matter of like, did you go see family? Like, did you get to travel? Or what fun thing did you do? How did you
Yeah.
spend time with your family? And whether like that's a single, like a son, like a kid with a single dad, or whether it's a family of 15 people, like, how did you spend time with your family? Like, whether or not we all, I mean, like, they might not all be biological, but we all have someone that we call
Yeah.
family. And so utilizing those opportunities to where we take the comparison trap out of even our speech, um like, so important. And I think that's really, really good. And it, like, if we're, I think that's the focal point of Advent. Like, it's not about Christmas, it's about the coming of
I don't think
Jesus.
another practical way to look at it too, that we can do as youth pastors, especially because again, I go to those families that are maybe more low income, and this can be a
Mm-hmm.
real hard thing because there is this social pressure to have received something or spent the right time or gotten the right rest and stuff, and so maybe we go back to the standard. Hey, what are two or three things that you loved about your week? And maybe it's
Yeah.
just that simple, like, hey, I didn't have to go to school, I get to play video games, even if it's the same video game I've been playing for a long time, and I got to eat some food. Well, now we're not comparing
Yep.
anything. Now it's just, hey, this was my experience and this is what I enjoyed. And
Yeah.
or maybe it's like, what are two positives and negative? There's different ways to look at it, but it shapes it where it's not what'd you get, what was the fun thing, stuff like that. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
what are just two or three things that you just loved, um, and
Yeah.
that can open
Well, and
up
the
all
thing
kinds of
is
conversations.
yeah. Yeah. And I feel like we've hit this particular point time and time and time again in this podcast. Year 5 though, I mean, we're getting there. But it's just this mindset of also, when you hear things from your students,
Yeah,
remember them. If you talk to someone before a Christmas break and you're like, "Hey, what are you most excited for over Christmas break?" And they're like, "Hey, like, I have been grinding Call of Duty and I want to do da, 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 or whatever, or I like so excited for the food." And then the first question you ask them is, "Hey, like, dude, food, right? What was your favorite thing that you ate this past week?" And first off, they're like, "Hey, I can relate to that," like David
mm-hmm.
said just a second ago. But then they're also like, "Hey, you remembered." And so, like, the importance of
Shows you
stuff like
care,
that, like, so honestly, like, I this is an off the wall, like, going off on a rail
man. Ooh,
tangent, but I love the show Hot Ones
me
with
too.
Sean
I watch
Evans,
every
and
episode.
that's where they do wings and eat the spicy wings, go from like level 1 spice to level 10 spice, but it's also just like this interview of the
So
person.
good. I've learned so
And
much
like
from Sean
time
Evans.
and time, but time and time again, the thing that fascinates me is it's not really
Yeah,
about the wings. It's not really about anything to that nature. But the thing that catches celebrities off time and time and time again is when they're like, "Whoa, you
yeah.
did your research."
Like these aren't shallow
And
questions.
it's just this mindset of like, if you do your research, it does not matter who you are. if you remember something that was said, or if you find a way to build that common ground, people will be enthralled with the
Yeah.
conversation you're having, because they will be so invested and so just fully immersed in the conversation because you did your research. Like, I use Sean Evans as that
Hmm.
person, and he doesn't do his own research. I
He's got a
know,
team.
like,
Yeah.
he has a team of people. Yeah, he has a team of people that do all kinds of stuff for him, and that's fine. But I'm not saying you have to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you have an army of students. Let the students do research for you.
Yep.
If you're like, you have students that come up and say, "Hey, you might check in with this kid because they had a really bad week. They got this happened. They got sent to the principal's office. They failed two
Stuff they would
tests,
maybe never tell
whatever."
you.
Or or hey, like, I know you probably don't know this, but she's had a boyfriend for the last 6 months. They broke up,
Huge.
and some of us are like, "What? They had a boyfriend?"
True. Yeah.
Like,
They don't always
um,
tell you.
but yeah, and so they don't tell us. Like, I mean, in passing, to like on Sunday, I found out that one of my most involved students has been dating a guy for 3 months. I'm like, what the heck? Like, and so, like, but it's just one of those things now. Like, you go in and you utilize those conversations to build relationships and focus on the value that you can place and the importance that they have and the importance that they see through those questions.
Yeah.
So, like, tangent, really off topic for a second, but I'm pulling it back in, I promise. When you do this, when you ask these questions that we're talking about, when you're sharing this mindset of like, what is the importance of Advent, and you tell them and you're challenging them to do these things, follow
Yeah.
up with them. So if you're saying, "Hey, like, this is how you practice Advent," you use the Advent readings, you might do candles, you might do different reflection practices like meditation, or go through an Advent devotional or something to that nature. Whatever you challenge your students to do, follow up with them afterwards, because it's super important. And then it's not just this, oh, like, in one ear out the other thing. Is when you say, "Hey, I want y'all to do this, and when you get back, I'm gonna check in on with all of you and see how you did." They're like, "Oh, I have I have to do that." And they might be like, "Yeah, whatever." But when you ask the first kid if they did it, they're gonna be like, "Oh, oh no."
Yeah.
Like,
And then I even
so
think the follow up there too is can be really important because something that students constantly feel is this level like they're I feel like they're constantly juggling this feeling of shame and guilt for all kinds of different things. I mean, let's be honest, they get in trouble for everything. Oh, you woke up late. Oh, you didn't do this. Oh, you didn't get this grade on your homework. You didn't do your homework. You skipped class. You know, there's so many different things, and they're. I feel like students are constantly waiting to be chastised, and we need to create a culture where they can grace. Like there's enough grace that says, "Hey, I want to see you rise to the level that I know that you can." So encourage them. I'm not saying, but at the same time, give them a place that goes, "Oh man, I didn't know you were serious about that." Okay, all right, we're gonna challenge each other. Like, okay, now we see.
yeah,
Oh, we didn't do. Okay, well, this is a structure and a discipline, and here's why it matters. And if we continue to communicate the why things matter, they go, "Oh, okay," and you do it in a graceful way. They go, "Okay." It was like, so next week I want everybody to be able to give me a good answer for your thing, and they're gonna step up. You know, these students care. And,
yeah,
and the other thing, and I think it goes a little bit to your point earlier, is I think part of the reason why students don't tell us certain aspects. They tell us a lot of things that they wouldn't tell their parents, but the truth is, as we get older in youth ministry, and Brent and I have certainly gotten to this point, we're dads now. We're unk status. I'm told that all the time from our students. They're like, "Yeah, you're like an unk," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay." We're getting closer to that 40 mark. We're not there yet, but
I
we're
don't.
getting
Stop it,
but
stop
we're
it, stop
getting
it. I don't
closer to
like
that.
that.
And there is a level of I don't want to disappoint dad. I don't want to disappoint the person that I care about. And we need to be intentional
Yeah,
in knowing that. because there are certain things that students go, and they'll, and part of the reason why I bring this up is because I literally had a conversation with a youth pastor friend of mine in Colorado who was like trying to navigate a weird situation with a student that went from like practically like attached to the hip to putting a lot of space, and he was like, am I doing something wrong? And it ended up being a conversation where the student said, hey, I did something bad and I don't know how to tell you. And I was like, bro, you have an opportunity here. Practice your facial things in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds so crazy, but like, I can't tell you how many times I have like tried to think of like the worst case scenario for a student and looked at my reaction in the mirror, because the way that we react physically will either open or close doors. And that sounds completely crazy, but I mean, ultimately, these students are trusting us with something that absolutely terrifies them. And a lot of times, too, they'll play it up in their mind to be this big thing, and they tell you, and you're just like, oh, that's it? And they're like, oh, but this is a big deal to me. And you're just like, oh, okay, well, you're not pregnant. You know, you didn't get, you're not in jail. You know, we go to the worst case scenarios. And sometimes, like, a lot of our kids are good kids. Let's be honest. To them, maybe the worst thing is that they cheated on their test, and then their parents are going to hate them forever. And in their mind, that's what they think. And they need somebody just to say, it's okay. We're going to make it through this. And, you know, grace. And so I think in the same way, again, with Advent, it's this hope of the world tells us so many different things, and there's this commercialism with this season of getting and receiving and family and fun and experiences and stuff like that, where Advent pulls back the curtain, so to speak, and it provides kind of a structured period of reflection where we can focus on who Jesus is and what he wants for our lives. And when we do that, life becomes maybe just a little bit easier. I'm not saying it becomes easy, but it becomes a little bit easier because now we're following Jesus and his plan. And whether it's a situation where someone has done something bad and they think that they can't be redeemed or whatever, it's a reminder that the closer we are to God, the more we realize whatever that mountain or that obstacle or that drama or whatever that thing is in front of us that we think we can't get through, Advent is this beautiful reflection of it's okay, and we're gonna pause, and we're just gonna give it to God, and we're gonna trust, and not being lazy, but just trusting that God is gonna teach us in this season. And again, this season commercially is so busy and event focused and programmed, and a lot of times what I find myself thinking, at least in this season, is like it feels like this season more than other seasons in the past, my heart feels really full, but my body feels really tired. And that constant battle between the heart and the mind, and trying to will ourselves to keep going when we're tired, it's a hard thing. That's what we started with, and I think maybe it's where we end is this thought. It's like whatever you're going through, however many Christmas parties you have, and some of them that you might be really excited about, and some of them that you're dreading. Man, if I could just make it through this holiday season. How many of us as pastors say this? Like, if I could just make it through this holiday season, make it to January, we could finally pass out and be fine. You know, I have said that so many times.
Especially shout out to all the youth pastors that are also worship pastors.
100%. Like, I'm so ready for January. Like, we just started Advent, and I'm already tired of Christmas music. Like,
we did Christmas songs on Sunday, and I'm like, all right, I'm done. Like,
I did one. Like, can that be enough? Oh no, you want this and this and this and this and this and caroling. And I'm like, oh, I don't love it.
So very, very much. And so if you're like, man, I don't really know where to go with the whole Advent thing, and I don't have any good resources to use. Like, this is honestly, I mean, we've said this resource on here 1,000 times, but the Bible Project is one of the best out there. And the Bible Project actually has a really, really good thing on Advent and talks through the different weeks of Advent and has scriptural backing. and it talks through all the different things. And I just wanted to read their little passage on hope, to kind of finish out our podcast for today. It says, hope. Sometimes hope feels wishful, like crossing our fingers and dreaming of a better outcome. We might hope for better employment, healed relationships, or a brighter future. But that kind of hope is based on things that may or may not happen. When things don't go as we hoped, it can be crushing, our hope disappearing like vapor. As a season of reflection and contemplation, Advent invites us to imagine a different kind of hope, rooted in the unchanging nature of God and His promise to restore every part of His creation. Advent does not minimize pain or difficulty, nor does it assume things will get better soon. Instead, it faces the darkness with courage and chooses to trust that God's promises will come to pass, guaranteed by His long-proven faithful character. In the Hebrew Bible, the words most often used for hope are quava and yakal, which are also translated as wait. To hope in God means to wait with patient expectation, trusting that He will fulfill His promises. This kind of waiting leans forward, anticipating the day when Jesus will return to make all things new. Such hope empowers people to persevere, to act justly, and to serve others as a sign of restoration that will arrive through Jesus. And it makes me kind of think and jump to Isaiah 9:6, prophesying about the coming of Jesus. It says, "For a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace." So, with that being said, maybe Advent this year is for you. Maybe Advent this year is for your students. Either way, there's a lot to take in over the next couple weeks, and you're almost a week behind already because Advent actually started this past Sunday. But it's not too late. So with that being said, the 4 weeks of Advent typically are week 1 is hope, week 2 is peace, week 3 is joy, and week 4 is love. And of course, Advent leads to Christmas, and that's where the culmination of everything comes together, the hope, peace, joy, and love that we find in Jesus. And so, with that being said, maybe today stuck, maybe it didn't, maybe we just been rambling, but Advent is an important thing for you to pursue if you're not doing it already. And if you are pursuing it or you aren't pursuing it, it's still something that we need to be actively doing as a message towards our students so they can focus in on what's important as well. But next week we will be doing the same, and then we will, just as kind of a rundown for this month. So tomorrow is the 4th, or today, like if you're listening to this episode on the day it comes out, it'll be December 4th. Then we'll have an episode on the 11th. We will have an episode on the 18th, and then after that, it's Christmas. And so we will be taking off once again for the week of Christmas. And then New Year's actually falls on a Thursday as well, but we will have an episode that comes out on New Year's Day, just to keep up with our production schedule as far as what we like to do, which is 50 episodes a year. And if you're listening to this one is like 232 or something to that nature. So definitely we appreciate you spending time with us. We appreciate you listening. Say this often, say this time and time again. 2 things. We would love to hear from you. The number of times that we're recording podcasts and we're just like, maybe people are listening. It's cool. If not, it's totally fine as well. We do this for us just as much as we do it for y'all. But if you love a podcast or if you have comments on a podcast, we would love to hear from you. You can find us on social media at Talk Student Men, mostly on Facebook and Instagram, or you can shoot us an email at Brent or David at studentministryconversations.org, and we would love to have just some interaction with our listeners, because it says that there are at least 30 to 60 of y'all that listen a week. And so with that being said, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear your direction of where you might want us to go in the future. And with that being said, we also want you to share this with your youth pastor friends, because the more you share, the more it gets out to people in the community of youth pastors. And if we can help one, that solves the goal and the purpose of this, which is to inspire, encourage, and equip youth pastors to be a better youth pastor for the church that they're serving in. David, you seemed like you had something to say. Do you want to close this out, or are you good?
No, that was it. We really hope that you are encouraged. Ultimately, that's why we do this. And so, like you said, it's a blessing to us to be able to do this, and it's a good reminder too. I mean, ultimately, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're not saying anything that's revolutionary most of the time. Although there are times where we go, oh yeah, you know what I mean. And so, like, if nothing else, if it's a litmus test of where you are in your ministry, and as a reminder of where you're going, and what you're supposed to be doing, and ultimately let our failures also be lessons. There are things that we don't do well, and we process that together, and it helps us also understand we're not all just failing on our own, and we don't have to compare ourselves so much. And so,
yeah, awesome. Well, with that being said, we hope you have a great week. We hope that you are inspired, encouraged, and equipped. We hope you had a great and restful Thanksgiving week. And we hope to see you next week.